Happy Star Wars Day, folks. May the 4th be with you. I know, cheese, but it is Star Wars Day, and all over the galaxy, Star Wars fans are united in love. Yeah! Yeah, right. Nothing divides a community more than hate for Star Wars by Star Wars fans.
You know it to be true.
We look back at a podcast we did, and the big question is Star Wars ruining Star Wars? Will there ever be balance in the fandom, or is hatred for Star Wars the way of the Star Wars fan base? Let's get stuck in. Welcome to T&J.
Take over the world.
One episode at a time, taking over the world of entertainment, pop culture, and chat. But in this case, I think we're going to be taking over the galaxy as, yes, dun, 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 dun. Wrong sound, wrong theme tune. We are doing a Star Wars special. So we're coming from a galaxy far away. Maybe we're taking over the galaxy, Jay. Maybe. So we're going to be talking about Star Wars. We are in the UK, but we weren't at Celebration. More on that later. But we're going to talk about the news that came out of it, the movies, TV shows, Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary, and our big main topic today is Star Wars, the dog that's eating its own tail. Is it a house divided against itself, and Star Wars is ruining Star Wars? Oh, I wonder what George Lucas is thinking, eh? More of that to come, but first, a little bit of movie news. From a galaxy far away, just in, Jay.
And there was 3 new movies that was announced.
3?
Yeah, 3 new movies. I'm not even sure if I'm happy about it, but I'm going to go into it straight away. The first movie is announced is going to be directed by James Mangold, which is based on 25,000 years before the first Star Wars movie.
Apparently the origins of the Jedi.
That sounds interesting. The next one I'm really excited about, actually. This has made me change my mind about this one only, actually. The next movie that was announced is going to be directed by Dave Filoni, which is going to be based on the New Republic versus the Imperial Remnant, which is going to be in the Mandalorian era.
Yeah, that's what Mandalorian TV era.
And the last movie that was announced at Star Wars Celebration is going to be directed by Charmin Aboid Shinoy, and that is based on
Rey?
Yeah, Rey.
The return of Rey Skywalker.
I know. And it's based on 15 years after the rise of Skywalker, where Rey rebuilds the new Jedi Order.
And there were trailers at the Celebration too, which I'm most excited about. Apparently, we only saw the one that they released to the general public, us muggles, which was Ahsoka, which looks absolutely amazing. We're going to have to do a whole podcast or video about that alone, followed by what they showed sneak previews of Skeleton Crew, which is directed by John Watts of the recent Spider-Man movies. Andor Season 2 apparently looks really great, and the one that I'm most excited about is The Acolyte by Leslie Helland, who made Russian Doll, I think something on Netflix, and it's meant to be a dark, gritty villain story. They say Frozen meets Kill Bill, where I guess a Force-sensitive person is recruited by the Sith, who are in the shadows in this time, because this is like 100 years before A New Hope, where the Jedi are in their prime. They're wearing their pimped out white suits and their yellow lightsabers, apparently. I didn't see the trailer. But I'm hoping for an appearance of Yoda, because obviously he was at the top of the Jedi Council at that point in that era. Much to look forward to. Bit of Star Wars for everyone. That's a bit of a running theme right now. Some you won't like, some you'll love, but let's see. But on to our main stories today. Yeah, so it's unbelievable that we're almost at the end of The Mandalorian Season 3.
I know.
3 seasons.
3 seasons. I don't even understand how quickly the Mandalorian series has gone. The episodes. That feels like the other day that the episodes even started.
And let's just say this season has been a bit of a mixed bag. I've liked it. I've not been in love with it so far because it felt like it was treading somewhere. But we'll probably talk again in a separate video about The Mandalorian. But what I'll say is this is why we don't get good things. Because we throw our prams out like Grogu or something out of our pram or our hover buggy, whatever it is, without knowing the full picture. Is it a last episode the Mandalorian episode 6, we know the one with all the cameos, Lizzo and Jack Black. I'm like, what's Lizzo and Jack Black doing in my Star Wars? Christopher Lloyd, always welcome. Great Scott! Was Back to the Future fan, one of the other posters on our wall here, Back to the Future. So I knew he was coming. I still remember where I was when I heard that Apollo Creed, Carl Weathers, was going to be cast in the Star Wars project. I was like, Apollo? So very excited as an 80s kid to have Christopher Lloyd in it. And as it turns out, again, no spoilers, with Lizzo and Jack Black, they were fine. I think if you're heavily invested into that part of pop culture and who they are, it might have taken you out of it. But because I wasn't and we weren't, I was like, yeah, it's fine. It was a fun kind of Clone Wars-esque George Lucas era type of episode. And I think it's one of those where it will probably pay off a lot later down the line. You just have to have patience, Padawans. Crikey. You don't have to like an episode, but the thing is, when you didn't like a Star Wars movie, you had 3 years until the next one in the trilogy timeline, and almost 20 years for another saga, another set of films to start.
That's a long time, having to wait 3 years. Yeah, to wait 3 years for a film to come out, that's a long time. That's a really long time. But at least George would put in so much work within those years.
Yeah.
Like before the next one comes in, because he weren't playing around. Obviously, he weren't good at with characters or anything with the actors.
Yeah.
But he did go in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think
He didn't rush it.
no.
Like they rushed these
But
last-
here's the thing: you used to have 3 years or almost 2 decades, depending on the set of films. Now you've got a week, 1 week, and here is a perfect example to back up that. We have just watched Mandalorian, season 3, episode 7. And boy,
I don't even know what to say.
breathe, Aristoteles, breathe. Can I just say, if this was the only, this could have been a movie, and if it came out an hour and a half, then would have been done. I'm like, yeah, chefs, all the chefs kiss, or whatever they are in the Star Galaxy Far Away. I just thought it was excellent, and it just completely took the bad taste out of anything from the previous 6 episodes. It felt like it's dragging, what's going on. It makes perfect sense
Did
now.
you find all the episodes that bad?
No, I didn't, but I know there's a whole, almost like Imperial remnant in fandom that was like burning the whole house of Star Wars down. I'm like, chill, dude.
I actually quite
At
like
least
it.
let the season end before you do an autopsy.
I like the other episodes. For me, because I'm not a devoted fan, maybe I'm a bit more easy on it.
Yeah.
All the devoted fans are like, but for me, like this last one we saw was like, wow, this was
Yeah.
epic.
Yeah.
Really epic. But yeah, I think for me, I like the other episodes because I think with the episodes, you have to just try to be patient.
Patience,
It's a process.
Padawan.
I think people ain't got no time for these. They got time for the episodes, but they haven't. You just have to just keep it moving.
And that makes sense because back in the day, Star Wars was obviously a movie franchise, so you had to get all your candy in one.
Yeah.
Now it's finally realised George's vision of episodic serial storytelling, which means you can love an episode 1 week, hate it the next, then the other one you love more than anything you've ever seen before, then the other one just sucked, burned down, Lucasfilm, Star Wars sucks. You've got that level of, you don't have to wait long till a bus comes your way from a galaxy far away that you're going to love. And I'm not a shrill or an apologist. If there's aspects of Star Wars in Disney era that I really dislike, almost borderline hate, and then there's stuff like this that's just been like completely given. So without going into spoiler territory, the Mandalorians really show up in true Mando style, and the storyline is really building up, and it really plays on the bit of news we mentioned earlier where it makes sense that what Dave Filoni is going to be doing, exploring the New Republic versus the Imperial Remnant, potentially, that you've got this whole, the remnant of the Empire, which we know is there because obviously in the sequel movies you've got the First Order that are essentially loyalists to the Empire and to the Emperor, and it makes sense that in this whole period of time, again, this was like the books that came out in the early 90s and the Timothy Zahn books and the expanded universe, that the Empire just wasn't dissolved after Return of the Jedi. The Emperor was, and Vader, but there were remnants still fighting. So am I gone all nerdy for you?
Yeah, too nerdy.
Nerdy!
I think. Swiftly move on because it's going to be a bit too much.
Yeah. But Mandalorian episode 7, yeah, gimme.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can't wait for this finale. And whatever problems are going on behind the scenes and in Disney Star Wars, or what you don't like that's been on the screen so far, I can assure you, if you've not seen the episode, not a single Lizzo, Jack Black in sight, and some of the best Disney era Star Wars that we've seen. And I just got...
Why does it always...
Why'd they do it? Why'd you do it to us, Lucasfilm?
Yeah. Why does it always have to nearly end? It's getting so good.
Yeah.
That's the thing I don't understand. We're going into the last episode next week now. And
Yeah.
this is only when it's just like the engine's revving.
And you're going to have to wait at least a year and a half, at least, for Mandalorian season 4. So it's a bit cruel. Why'd you do this to us, Lucasfilm? Or should I say Bob Iger or the mouse? We'll keep you hanging on for a drug fix over several years.
If you think about it, there's a lot that goes into it behind the scenes, making these movies.
Yeah.
Making these movies, I always call them movies.
It's a TV series, not a movie.
They're so good,
Jay,
like, literally.
get it right.
They're so good. They're better than the movies we had.
Speaking of movies, we are going to be talking about the announcements of not one, not two, but three, which is the magic number, Star Wars movies that are coming our way, or are they? Or are they? Kathleen, bless her, has often announced movies that have never seen the light of day. Josh Trank, Boba Fett, the Game of Thrones guys, Old Republic movie. I could go on and on. Rian Johnson trilogy. But maybe, just maybe, with this crop of directors and crop of storylines, that they are really going to stick the landing. And even if it's rough and messy, Han, he crashes the ship.
We can't afford, they cannot afford to do rough and messy films.
Another happy landing.
Because the last three was really bad.
Oh, Rise of Skywalker.
It's just so risky.
All day, all long.
It's so risky, Tony, making these films. No, but although I do backtrack and say, because Dave Filoni...
Hey, we'll get to that. Okay. May I just say on record, if you've heard our podcast before, Lady J does not think Star Wars should return to the big screen. So we're going to get there in a moment. But before then, we just want to, talk about Celebration. Star Wars Celebration that came to London. It conquered, and then it went back home to the States again. And here's the thing. We weren't there. I know.
Why were you there?
And we're British.
Why were you
It
there?
was right round the corner. The true answer is, if any of you have ever watched us before, and if you're not, we're going to educate you. We're Christians, God botherers and all that business. And it was a little kind of obscure holiday called Easter. Jesus Christ died on the cross, rose again. We celebrate it, big deal. So we were very much involved with church and worship. And if it was any other weekend, we would have found ourselves there. But some of us are devout. You know what? In our country, there was a religious census and people put Jedi. For all those worshipping at the Convention XL who were Jedi, or some kind of acolyte, some kind of force in between religious belief, whatever that is. I'm sure you had a great time. We had a good time watching it in pieces. I still feel annoyed that they don't let you see like the trailers and stuff like that.
Yeah, why don't they just, because it's not fair. Say for instance a devoted fan couldn't make it. Like, it would be nice for them to show like the trailers.
Yeah.
Those people who couldn't be there, maybe they're in America, they couldn't fly over to the US.
Yeah.
To the US, I mean.
To UK.
Sorry.
What country are we in?
Yeah, what country?
Here's the thing. You could have bought your whole 4-day weekend ticket and still not have gotten into any of the rooms that they were full to capacity that played the exclusive panels and the footage of the new shows coming up and stuff like that. So
That's not right.
So you could have spent your money, you could have been in there hearing the screams and the oohs and the ahs from people coming out of the building going, yay! And you're out there like a gooseberry being like, I wish I was in there. Wish I saw that exclusive clip.
If you've paid your money, you got a specific ticket to see, say, everything.
Yeah.
And then you miss out on it. I'll be like asking for my refund.
I would be like Anakin
refund.
in Attack of the Clones, massacring everyone, including the women and children. Okay, that sounds a bit rough. Maybe not the women and children. But everybody there, I would just be going at it with my lightsaber, going, the dark side would consume me because I'm thinking, we paid the same money to be in the same place on a bank holiday weekend, yet you get to get all the goodies, all the Easter eggs, and I get to play with a foil. What's up? What's that about, Lucasfilm?
That's not right.
So I understand not being there, not seeing anything, even though really with all the millions of Star Wars fans, and to me, Lucasfilm needs the bump. It needs the excitement of the fandom, where now it feels like a house that's burning itself down. More on that later. What you saw some of the panel, you saw some of the footage in the live feed. What will you make of what you saw?
Yeah, I think some of the stuff I was watching in doses.
As a casual.
Yeah, it made me excited. No, I won't say excited. It made me feel happy actually to think that obviously they're going on. They're still talking about doing films and doing more shows. For me, the shows gets me more excited than hearing about films. I'm like, maybe they should make more films because of you don't blame me though because of the failure of the last three. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a lot of risk making more movies again, and I think it sticks to the shows. The shows do great.
Yeah.
It's less risky. And each and every week you have a new episode that comes out. It's a process as well. That's why when I was even watching Obi-Wan Kenobi and the fans were like, "Oh, we don't like this episode. Oh, we like this one." It's like people don't have the patience even with the episodes. They like, want it to be good like every single week.
You do want to watch something that's good. You don't want to watch something that's crap.
Good, but then,
can't wait for that crap episode.
Even with Obi-Wan Kenobi, it started to get really good. Even when it was at this point, like with Mandalorian.
Yeah.
That's when it started to rev up. And that's when you wanted more. Like Book of Boba as well.
You said rev up. Rev up.
That's it. It's like getting really good.
Yeah.
When it's going to almost end.
Yeah, that is tough, isn't it?
So it's almost, I think, I wish they had more seasons. I wish there was going to be more episodes. Like 4 more or something.
Yeah.
That's what it's like with series. It's just if you have to wait for another year and a half.
Very expensive as well.
Very expensive.
So some of the things that it was interesting to see Hayden Christensen get some love. Anakin Skywalker himself. That was beautiful, seeing the crowd just celebrate him because, again, we did a video talking about Ahmed Best, simply the best cameo in Star Wars where he got to, I wouldn't say redeem himself because he didn't do anything wrong. And Jar Jar has a place in a galaxy so big. They don't love everyone. But how after the fan base viciously, cruelly abused Ahmed Best over years, how he was able to come back as not just a Jedi master, but the one who saved Grogu. Spoiler if you haven't seen like 3 episodes back. Not much of a Star Wars fan if you're 3 episodes behind The Mandalorian. So it was great how they celebrated Ahmed Best. We made a case that maybe they could find something for Jake Lloyd to do to pay back all that hate that he got between Jar Jar and Anakin. Yippee! Kid Anakin.
He's moved on. He's doing something else now. He isn't even acting anymore, is he?
Yeah.
He's swiftly moved on. And I don't blame him. I think I would
swiftly moved on.
I don't think I would want to be an actor anymore if people treat me like that.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Call the whole thing off.
And you would never know now. He could be a major actor if he just stuck around.
Because he was a good kid actor.
Yeah.
It's not his fault,
it's fair. It's not
you didn't
fair.
like the character.
Deal for him. Imagine having a part like that. That's a major.
I'd be going yippee if I was running around being like one of the major characters in a Star Wars film.
People want him to be like. I don't understand, but that was his character.
Yeah. And obviously Hayden, as an adult, a more older Anakin, got roasted by the fan base at the time and the media and everything. So it was lovely to see him get his flowers. And then he did the panel with the Obi-Wan Kenobi panel, which, as much as there's flaws in that show, there was a lot to love in it. And if you add all the 6 hours or whatever together, and there is a cut going out where they edited the movie down, that's still more than one of the prequel movies in terms of a length of footage and experience that was top-notch Star Wars. So for me, there was far more good. I'm a bit like Padme and Luke. I see the good in it. There was far more good in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series and great stuff than there was not so good and bad. And I think largely that was seeing the reunion of Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin, aka and also known as Darth Vader. That was something that was absolutely marvelous to see. You saw a little glimpse of it when I had it on of Obi-Wan and Anakin, Ewan McGregor. They're obviously good friends in real life, and
it's good to see them back together again. So obviously when they were on set, that would have been like so many years that had gone by.
Yeah,
they would have seen each other, and it's like seeing them on Star Wars Celebration together. That was actually refreshing to see that they're still in touch and they're still not best buddies, but they're good friends. Yeah, good friends. And also they've got obviously a lot of memories.
Yeah.
When they first filmed, and obviously Ewan McGregor mentioned about when. Hayden Christensen was a lot younger. Like a kid and stuff, young boy, young man. Yeah, Refreshing, isn't it?
So that was great. Also, I enjoyed seeing some of the conversations with some of the new creatives again. Not new, but like when they talked to Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, and Dave Filoni up with emotion, talking about his love for Star Wars and the way the fans have embraced him and some of his creations like Ahsoka and the Rebels crew, and just his love for it. And I think it just was really cool, and hear him talk about sprinkling in little bits from the expanded universe. Now, I never really was down for the expanded universe, all the books, like the Kevin J. Anderson stuff. I just about read the Timothy Zahn stuff at the beginning. I was at that age. For me, I'm a bit more of a Lucas purist. So that's why, for me, Dave Filoni is the way, because he is the Padawan. He couldn't be more of a successor to the Star Wars legacy Lucasfilm if he literally came out of the loins of George Lucas himself. George Lucas, I know, sees him like a son, that they still have contact. So he is the one. He's the one to pass down that classic Lucas vibe as it veers off in multiple different directions, which we're probably going to talk about in a bit. Any other thoughts from what did you watch it, the footage, the live stream, and feel like, oh, fiddles, I wish I was there?
No, I think for me, no, not necessarily. I didn't think, when I was watching it, I was thinking, oh, I wish I was there at the Excel in London. I was like, yeah, if I got an opportunity to be there, I'd be there, but I wasn't like trapped. I wish I was
Drax,
there. I could have actually
Dingfarrick.
I could have actually had a chance to work at the event.
Yeah,
the same reason
yeah.
the team I mentioned earlier. I couldn't be there, but yeah, I don't think I was thinking, oh yeah, I wish I could be there. I'm not that invested.
I worked there once, and it was a very interesting time. And these I got to get in without having to pay for a ticket, but they worked my ass. They worked me like Watto in his slave quarters on Tatooine. Oh boy, that was fun.
But you volunteering? You didn't get paid for that, did you?
No, it was a volunteer. But they paid me in being allowed to see little morsels of crumbs of the event. So I had fun.
Did you get to go in the room, like
some of the rooms?
Room?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I did. I got to see a few things, and I think, was it the year that I was there when they announced Thrawn being in Rebels, and at the time I was not as invested because I knew who he was. I'd read the books, but I was like, okay, bring in some stuff. But now, especially, it's poetic. It's like poetry. It rhymes. George Lucas. Them announcing Lars Mikkelsen as being Thrawn in live action is full circle. It's like poetry. It rhymes. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, in closing, I would have loved to have been there with a group of friends. Because I feel like with that type of thing, especially when you're seeing everybody hang out, dressed up in cosplay, dressed as Mandalorians, the funniest thing, did you see the cosplayers who dressed up as the prisoners on Andor?
No.
One way out! One way out! You know the ones they dressed in the white with orange striped jumpsuits, and they ran around. They were running around the auditorium looking for an exit, going one way out. Oh, it's brilliant. And eventually they broke free and took a big group photo out in the concourse. That was legendary because it was so funny, so clever. And there was also a reenactment of End of Rogue One where they had the Tantive 4's soldiers running from Darth Vader, hacking them down. But instead it was the hologram, the data of the Death Star. It was like a credit card, and it goes to the cash machine.
So if you had an opportunity to go to the Star Wars Celebration 2023 at the Excel.
Yeah.
What would you go dressed up? If you went to Star Wars Celebration,
you
had a chance, you had a ticket and everything, would you go dressed up, or would you just wear your normal clothes?
I would have loved to have gone dressed up to the hilt, and I'm torn between whether I'd be all pimped out like Lando Calrissian. Hello there, like, how you doing, Chewbacca? Still hanging out with this loser? Or go in a costume where maybe I was like some Jedi or something, or a Mando. But the reality is, I would have likely just gone in my own clothes, regular Freds. I think because it's just a lot of effort. I ain't got that time. Editing these videos is long enough, let alone spending hours and weeks and days and weeks like Iron Man, Tony Stark making his suit in a cave. Oh, I'm going to make this Mandalorian. Get me some Beskar.
Why not?
Would you?
I'm not sure.
Slave Leia?
I'm not sure if I did. I would probably go just with Ray or something.
Ray!
I think an outfit like that would be quite interesting.
Then I'd be chasing you around the Excel Centre going, Ray! I'd dress as Finn going, Ray! Have you seen Ray? Oh, looking for my wife. Where is she?
She gone.
Yeah. Speaking of Ray, that was a link there to the movies. Just so we know where we are, where you at home know where we are in terms of our perspective. Tell us about your perspective on the Star Wars movies.
On the spot, Star Wars movies.
Both the ones, very briefly, the ones we've got, and what you think about continuing back in the cinema.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me, the last three that's gone by, I didn't find them. In fact, I will tell you this short story.
Yeah.
When I first watched the movies, all three,
Yeah.
I thought they were great. I thought they were amazing because obviously I'm a casual Star Wars fan.
Oh.
So I went to see the last three movies. At first, I was like, oh, I really like these movies. Oh yeah, I'm digging it.
You said you really loved those movies.
No. Yeah. Oh, did I?
Yeah, you loved them, mate.
Yes, I
But
did.
like them.
I said not liked, which is really weird, But then after contemplating
After
in
a Sith
terms
Lord
of,
influenced what you
I
thought.
know, I think it's because I did screenwriting years ago. And thinking about Scream, the tone, in terms of storytelling, and I thought it don't even make sense. For me, it was just they wrote stuff in, and it was like, why didn't they? You got two different directors, but it's almost like they didn't have a conversation. They didn't have this chat.
No Skype call or
no
Zoom. No
communication, there's
sending text
picking up
with
from
notes.
and changing like we would thought it was going to go a different way, and then it goes that way. She becomes a Skywalker. How on earth does she become a Skywalker? She's thinking, huh?
Yeah.
How does that? It didn't make sense. So nothing. I think my outcome of the films was like, nah. Like, what on earth were they doing?
Great start. We
Great
loved The
start.
Force Awakens, even though we know it was a reheated in the microwave A New Hope.
Yeah.
But we understood it. I understood it that you had to get the general public back into Star Wars in a way they're excited again. So it was a great relaunch or reboot.
I think even Force Awakens would have been a film okay on its own. And then maybe Ryan Johnson's one. But then the other, it just made, in fact, the last one just made it worse.
Yeah.
Like, what? I thought she was going to find her parents. Like, that didn't work out. Like, huh? It's like the Emperor's own granddad. It's like, and then she said, oh, God, she's a Skywalker. It's like, what? Like, nothing. And then I thought, you know what? They don't need to make any more movies. And that's why, obviously, Kathleen Kennedy was like, right, we've got to make some shows. And they went in, didn't they? Like, no.
They doubled down. Once The
Because she was
Mandalorian
like,
was successful, the
literally-
experiment is like, oh, attention is here now.
Yeah, because she's literally having to be like, oh shoot, like now this didn't go down too well. We're gonna have to now make up for what we've done.
Yeah.
What I've done is her.
Scrub the sheets we
She
just
messed up.
soiled.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like, they don't need to make any more movies. For me, the shows is what's in it for me. I love the shows. You wait each week for a new episode. And I'm quite patient with the episodes because my expectations are high, but not like the devoted fans, of course. They're like, oh my god, it's got to be good every week. But for me, the shows are fine. I don't need any more movies, and that's what's been my
Here's the thing, it's not lost on me that Damon Lindelof, who's famous for writing the show Lost, has just left one of the movie projects which symbolizes that Star Wars was lost. I've got A New Hope, which we'll get into a second, but it's like with the movies, Star Wars is a movie franchise. It always was. Even when there was all this expanded universe, books and comics, Dark Horse comics and all that stuff, role-play games, which as a ravenous fan who had starving for content, it filled a spot, some more than others. And then obviously the prequels came and that didn't quite set the world on fire for everybody, but then there was a remnant hanging on to the Clone Wars. Ultimately, even with all this supporting material, it began as a movie series and it's still beloved as a movie series. And I think that there should always be a Star Wars movie if you're continuing the Star Wars franchise. Now, where it gets a bit murky is that the Disney shows are so advanced, the technology and the scope, that it's hard to tell what is a movie and what is a show, where a show ends and a movie begins and vice versa. So on that level, because the best of the Disney Plus Star Wars shows have looked cinematic and epic, you have an advantage of having that level of immersion, but with less stakes, a smaller budget. However, the worst of the episodes, especially when they've overused the volume, do look like cosplay. I don't hate the Book of Boba like many. I actually enjoyed it as a guilty pleasure, but some of it looked like cosplay. People dressing up in costume.
Do you think, in terms of, for me, I know what my thoughts are, but do you think that Boba Fett, well, first of all, I say about me, for me, I don't think Boba Fett, they had that budget anyway, not like The Mandalorian. Their budget's, I can tell it's definitely a bigger budget than Mandalorian. Do you think that they could have maybe had a bit more, used a bit more money on Boba Fett to make it better?
I've been following all the rumours on the grapevine, and to me it seems there were issues behind the scenes. We know this because Lucasfilm announcing movies and directors every 5 minutes and then it being cancelled or scrapped. So we do know there was trouble in Paradise, there was trouble in the Lucasfilm HQ, and there was rumours that The Mandalorian was in trouble. We know that Pedro Pascal had issues and I think almost walked. We know about the Gina Carano firing, which still doesn't sit well with us at all. And there was a long hiatus between The Mandalorian season 2 and this season 3. And I think Robert Rodriguez came up with an idea to do a Boba Fett show, which ended up being like The Mandalorian 2.5. And it seemed like they crammed a lot of stuff into the Boba Fett to fill out the Mandoverse. And you've got conflicting stories. You've got Jon Favreau, the idea that Jon Favreau liked, and Dave liked playing in a small sandbox just with the Mandalorian character and Grogu. But then the powers that be saw the success and were like, we're going to Marvel the heck out of this. We're going to MCU it. Chuck in everything, connective universe, so now the movies will connect up. And made it something that was a small lone wolf and cub cowboy Ronin storyline into this sort of big opening up the universe. I can see where that could be true. And then you look at the quality of the Book of Boba Fett and some of the Mandalorian season 3, and you can see it being bumpy. I feel they're sticking the landing so far with season 3, but you can see where there were bumps. We know that Din Djarin isn't really played by Pedro Pascal 90% of the time. It's, I think, John Wayne's grandson and whoever's in the suit. Yeah, we know this. It's not a secret. Obviously, Pedro Pascal does voiceover work. In terms of movies, they've got to really bring out something special to justify the millions and millions that they spend in a movie versus a TV show. And of course, Bob Iger's back, and he's the one who I think rushed Star Wars. It's like he rushed the sequel trilogy into production because they paid $4 billion to George. So we're going to milk this cow till its teat is dry. That's why it felt rushed, why there was not a single cohesive plan. But your thoughts are you don't want movies, do you?
I don't want the movies because of last time. It's just the last
hurt
movie.
Before.
Yeah, it's the pain from those ones. Even though I said, oh, they're good and stuff, I changed my mind. But I think for me, it would have to be a turnaround to get the right people, as we know now.
Yeah.
They get the right people to do these, and it's 100% amazing, then it'll be winner for me. But I think making movies,
in a winner chicken dinner.
I think overall making Star Wars movies it feels so scary to me.
Yeah.
Because it's such a big risk.
It's George.
Like, if they get these new ones wrong, I don't think they should make any more. Even though you've said, "Oh, Star Wars is based," they're from movies.
Star Wars is forever.
It's a movie franchise, but for me, the shows have been just killing it.
Yeah.
And they do. That's why I always end up calling Mandalorian a film, because the cinematography is amazing.
Yeah.
Like it just looks like a film.
Yeah, and
I think if they get this wrong, it's like they could be in trouble. Kathleen Kennedy might be yeeted out.
They'd need to go into hiding on Dagobah and wait for the next chosen one. So let's get into these 3 movies that they announced. So they announced the James Mangold, who's an amazing director. I love what he did with Logan. I loved the Tom Cruise, Cameron Diaz film, Night and Day. That was a really good underrated film. It looks like what they're doing with Indiana Jones, they're really happy with, because it's the same company. He's directed Indy Jones 5 for Lucasfilm, replacing, of course, the legend, the GOAT, Steven Spielberg. So Kathleen's hung around him, and apparently he went to Kathleen saying, oh, I've got an idea. What happened to the first Jedi and beginnings of 25,000 years in Star Wars past? So a long, long, long time ago in a galaxy far away. So that's the Mangold one, the first Jedi, because they showed a whole timeline, this Star Wars fan, the whole timeline, like the Marvel do, you know, from the beginning of the universe to when it ends. It never ends, it's Star Wars. And then the second announcement was a Dave Filoni. Yes, the man with the hat finally gets a big screen gig. Him directing a movie set in the Mandalorian era, possibly tying up the threads of the Mandoverse in a kick-ass movie of the New Republic versus the Imperial Remnant, where they can draw in so much from the EU because it's the whole skirmish that happens 30 years or 20 odd years before The Force Awakens. All that storytelling. A lot of fans are excited about that. And of course, the left field one, the one that's got people going, huh? Scratching their heads, is a movie by Charmaine Obaid Chinoy. Never heard of her before, but give her props. She's an Oscar winner, so I think more from the art house indie kind of vibe. Not anyone really familiar with Star Wars, though she did direct for Disney for Miss Marvel, I think a few episodes or so. But anyway, she is telling the story 15 years after the rise of Skywalker of the New Jedi Order, featuring a returnee, quite controversial, but a big one, Rey Skywalker, Palpatine, Rey Skywalker, Rey, followed by John Boyega's Finn chasing after her, returning to the galaxy. And again, I thought Daisy Ridley, who came out on stage and was a big, hey, was really good in the movie, in the trilogy, even though they didn't know what they were doing. She was good in it. And I think, but it's controversial because whatever you feel about the sequel trilogy, whether you are a staunch defender or a rabid hater, it's a very controversial series. So returning to that just seems, well, questionable.
I think for me, something just come to me actually. Why didn't they just make it as a series? Because I just love Star Wars.
Yeah, the Rey Jedi Order.
No, I think seriously, I don't think they should have made this Rey one. Please don't go through with it. It's like we don't need the continuation 15 years later of this Rey.
Surrender.
Of this Rey, I mean, of Rey's story. We don't need it.
Do you think they're going to bring John Boyega back? Or no, rather, do you think he would come back after some of the things he said about Disney and Lucasfilm?
I don't think so. I don't think John Boyega will come back, because how are they going to write him in this screenplay?
Remember, they didn't do this very well, but they intimated that Finn had the Force and he was going around with something to tell Rey, and because they didn't really follow that through, it made it look like he was fangboying her. Oh, just I want to really, or going to tell her that he loves her, even though obviously she had feelings for Kylo Ren, Ben Solo. Who knew? But poor Finn. So it's clear that Finn has the Force, which makes sense when you watch The Force Awakens, because you see him blink, and it's like he was able to break his programming and his conditioning through being Force sensitive, even though it doesn't make sense because there were other stormtroopers you find out in The Rise of Skywalker who uprose against the First Order and escaped. So I don't think they were clear whether it was him being able to break the mental conditioning because he has the Force, or it was just something that he did and others did who don't have the Force. But anyway, so I would love to see John Boyega come back as a Jedi Knight with a lightsaber. Then that could almost make everything forgiven, how they botched his character by the end of the sequel trilogy. Do you think?
Nah, I disagree. I don't think they should.
Really?
Nah, I don't think they should bring John Boyega back. I don't think they should even do that movie in the first place.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Because if that Rey one is a failure, oh my god.
Yeah, if it's a double whammy.
That's gonna so bad. That's why I think they should have just made it as a series, because as I said before, the series are less risky, especially with that Ray one. You can't get away with. You can get away more with a series.
Yeah,
like doing bad than a film.
I agree, because you can come back with a killer episode.
Exactly, there's just too much to lose. I'm just scared. Although I say Dave Filoni.
Yeah.
Now I'm happy about that one because it's Dave. Remember I said
Padawan Dave.
I
think he's a knight by now, if not a master.
One of our other videos, I said if they bring on Dave Filoni and John Favreau to make a movie, listen, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Because I'm happy
Game
with what they're
over.
doing with Mandalorian and
Yeah.
I'm really happy with that. But 1 out of 2 of the people I said, that's good.
But I forgot to mention, it's important to mention this, that, let me just look it up. There's a rumour, believe it or not, that Ben Solo could return in this new movie.
Oh, wow.
Don't ask me how. Spoiler alert, we know he gave his life for Rey because Rey gets all the toys. She gets everything. We're not Rey haters, by the way, but it is a bit odd that she gets the Falcon, she gets Chewie, she gets R2, she gets the Jedi books, she gets like Rey, she gets the Skywalker name and this life force. But I would not hate that. If they can bring back Palpatine, I wouldn't hate them bringing back Ben Solo, because I like the character of Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, and I like the fact that there is someone with Skywalker blood still alive, not just borrowing names. Though I think some people miss that there is poetry to the Phantom Menace, in that the whole plot, one of the major plots of the Sith was to cheat death. And Anakin's whole thing was to stop the one he loves from dying. So it's interesting that he couldn't stop the one he loves from dying, but Ben Solo could, by sacrificing his life the right way, rather than murdering Jedi kids in the temple, that kind of stuff. I don't know. I would love to see Finn come back as a Jedi Knight and give John Boyega the respect that he deserves and give him something to do. But the reality is, mate, if that was the case, they probably would have announced it, because that would have literally made the place erupt if he came out and he's like, yeah, I'm a Jedi.
I think John Boyega's moved on. He's moved on with other projects now. I can't see him coming back
Yeah.
to the Star Wars.
Giving up Rey.
Nah.
Yeah. But the ones, so you're a bit mixed on that one, on
I'm not
the
mixed. I'm saying I don't
Rey
want
movie.
the Yeah, I don't want it at all.
Yeah.
I'm saying like straight, I'm not no mixed. I'm like,
Yeah.
I do not want that movie.
Luke Skywalker
It'd be failure.
heading the Jedi Order or bust. The James Mangold one I am excited about, in that he's a great filmmaker and there's no one to upset, because this is so many thousands of years before classic Star Wars that if it even was a flop and it wasn't very good, you can just say, oh yeah, that happened 25,000 years ago. Forget it. It's not a big deal. Doesn't interfere with doesn't step on any toes. I'm excited about it because you can really go crazy with it, because you can say, whoa, this is 25,000 years ago, guys. A lot happened. Do I want the exploration of the Jedi Knights from the beginning? I love the idea of looking back at the past Jedi, like Old Republic era, but the very beginning, so there's not going to be many lightsabers, even if there's one in it. There's no Sith. It depends what they go, but it's interesting. It could be interesting. Could be.
James, have I seen that in Day?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
I can't remember the movie.
You saw Logan.
Yeah, I saw Logan. So he's got a good starting point, because he's a good
Yeah.
director. So let's
Yeah.
see.
We'll see.
About that. It's just the Ray one, don't do it.
And I think it makes sense that what Kathleen Kennedy is clearly doing is they need to make movies. I have a feeling that Disney, the mouse, are breathing down their neck to make movies, because that's where the big money is. They don't make a ton of money from the streaming, but the movies can make them millions or billions, rather. It's important that they make the movies, because that's where the money's coming in. And I feel there's pressure on Kathleen Kennedy. She's a fantastic, legendary movie producer, but she's not George Lucas, and she's not she's an executive. And I think when she gets bashed a lot, people forget that she's doing what a movie producer does. She's more interested in the talent that she can work with and the experience of making a movie, rather than a protector of the Star Wars lore. You have people like Pablo Hidalgo for that, Lucas, or Filoni. So she's made mistakes, but at the end of the day, I hate it when people online on these channels on YouTube demonize her like she's the devil. She's a person. At the end of the day, George picked her, she made some mistakes and she's trying to correct
Yeah,
things.
but I think for me, I disagree with that because I think Kathleen Kennedy literally failed in those last few films. Like, they were so bad, it didn't even make sense towards the end. The last one didn't make sense because it's like, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
It was so messy.
Okay, but here's the thing. I feel that she's invested in trying to clean that mess up, even if it's going to be clumsy, because they need a movie out because Disney are breathing down their neck, I believe. And I believe the biggest mistake they've done has been announcing projects on a whim. In movies, it can take years and years to develop something, and you want to get people excited, but the ink hasn't dried on the contracts between these directors with Lucasfilm. So they've announced them, and then they realize, oh, the pressure, or oh, we might be micromanaged, or oh, I can't do like the guys who did the Lego movie. Everything is awesome. Those guys, their name escapes me right. They're Spider-Verse, Into Spider-Verse, awesome. They were signed on, but they weren't even making the film that they were told to make. So that was a disaster. So I think it looks like they're playing with safe hands now, because Mangold obviously has made this Indiana Jones movie, so that he's already in the camp. So handing him a movie makes sense because they know what he's about. They're in business with him already. There's no risk. And he's a mature veteran who the industry respects. He's an Oscar winner, I believe. Filoni makes a heck of a sense because that keeps the loyalists happy, like us, because he is the apprentice, the Padawan, the graduate of Lucas himself. So to me, he is a quintessential continuation of the Star Wars that we know and love, OG Star Wars. So he keeps that together. And now with the Rey one, with female director and stuff like that, I'll be honest, I think that's more the progressive, ideologically left side of Lucasfilm that are trying to say, hey, we're having one for us. So one for them, one for me, one for them. These three movies, they represent almost different audiences of Star Wars, of the fandom, gathering the tribes, one for the diehards, one for the progressives, etc., and an outlier, and also giving it to people that are not going to run off and leave the project or do something crazy. So safe pair of hands, predictable, especially if Filoni won, but I think in the right direction.
Yeah, I don't know. My question to you is, people, once these movies, like, they promoted it and everything, and it's going to be coming out in the cinema, do you think people are going to go in droves? You know, like back in the day, loads of people pack up at the cinema, oh my gosh, get all excited. What do you think? How do you think the fans are going to react to these movies when they're like, oh my gosh, it's going to come out on such and such a date?
Which one? I want to clear up something. We weren't at Star Wars Celebration, but I did read some of the interviews with Kathleen Kennedy, and I think there's a misunderstanding going around where people are saying that the Filoni movie is 6 to 7 years out. My interpretation of what was said was no, it was that she was including the development of The Mandalorian to this date, that it's been a 6 to 7 year process. Not that the movie's 6 to 7 years away, but that including the time we've had with the streaming series, it's going to be about a 7 year period. There's no logical way on earth they're going to be announcing a movie that's 7 years down the line. That makes zero sense.
Announce it so early like that.
Yeah.
It's like, it made no sense.
It no sense.
Why would you even announce something that's so far ahead? And like for people to like be not sharp enough to understand that.
Yeah, especially when they've been in trouble all this time for announcing movies that didn't even get into development process. So I think it depends on which movie. I think the Mangold one is... The Filoni one might be closer than you think, because again, Filoni, this is not something that's just been and that happened. There's been talks of this, even in the rumour mill, that Filoni's taking the Mandoverse, what it's been labelled, into live action, into movie space. So there's been a lot of development on that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's a lot closer than we think. I think the Mangold one is not round the corner because he's potentially he's still wrapping up things with Indy 5, and then he's going to be working on Swamp Thing, the comic book movie for DC. But I think if this happens and he doesn't fall out with creative differences. This is probably not 2025, like 26, 27. So the nearest one will be the Ray movie. You just call it the Ray movie for ease. That's the hardest sell, because you're not going to get the hardcore. You're not going to bring the tribes together like Din Djarin or Bo-Katan. You're not going to bring all Star Wars fans together under a Ray movie. You're just not. And
They're
I think
feeling the burn from the last time.
yeah,
So
feeling
like, we don't
the burn.
We don't have any confidence in this movie. I do. I'm a casual Star Wars lover.
Yeah. You're a casual. You're a
But
cash.
it's like, I don't even have confidence.
You're an
in the movie.
acolyte.
So can you imagine someone
Well, I'm a
who's
Sith Lord.
a devoted Star Wars person?
Yeah.
How are they gonna feel?
Yeah. So, in conclusion, loving the idea of James Mangold's Star Wars, because he's a fantastic director and a proper movie director, so it won't feel like a TV movie. And he's already said he's got disdain for the volume. The volume is great tech, but not for everything. So that's fun. The Filoni one, again, as a true Lucas fan, I still feel very difficult. It's almost like Star Wars is with a stepdad now, and you love the stepdad, but he ain't quite your dad. I feel like with Star Wars, that Lucas is still, for me, the father of Star Wars, and it's never been the same since he's not been involved. But anyway, Filoni is like the brother who steps up and is like, I'll continue the George legacy, so that's exciting. And this Ray movie, I'll give it a go, I'll give it a shot, but I think we're agreed that's the least of the three that we're looking forward to, and it's got a lot to win us over.
It's not even that. Are they actually going to make this movie? Actually, I did read something the other day.
Yeah.
It's actually...
Tell me more.
They're actually still writing it.
Yes.
It looks like it's going ahead.
I think Stephen Knight has replaced Lindelof, the guy who created Peaky Blinders. That'll be fun.
Interesting.
Peaky Jedi.
The more I'm thinking about that, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Couldn't be worse than Rise of Skywalker. Anywho, sorry JJ. Speaking of movies, it was, believe it or not, a big anniversary of one of the OG movies, and of course we are OG fans. It was only the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi, Ichiwawa, aka the greatest Star Wars movie ever made. I know actually Empire is the best movie. I love Empire Strikes Back to bits. It's the best made, it's the best written, it's the iconic one. But for me, who was 4 years old when I first saw Return of the Jedi when it came out, and with all of that conclusion of Luke and his dad, the Emperor, the rebels finally having the victory over the evil Empire, and Jabba's palace, which had more creatures and effects than I've ever seen, that just blew my mind. All these aliens. It is the one that means the most to me as a Star Wars fan. I adore A New Hope. It is the Star Wars movie because it's the first one. But Return of the Jedi brought everything I loved from all three movies together in a bow and just left an impression on me. What do you think about Return of the Jedi?
Return of the Jedi, yeah. I didn't watch Return of the Jedi at a young age. I watched it, I think, in my teens or something. Because I only started to watch Star Wars when I was a bit older.
Teenager.
I wasn't a little kid watching Star Wars. You said was it when you were 4 it came out?
My earliest memories of Star Wars are as maybe even a 3-year-old, because by that time, the first Star Wars was played every Christmas here in England on normal television. So I have the memories of the white corridors and stormtroopers shooting from the opening of A New Hope. But Jedi was the one I watched the most, because number one, I was old enough when it came out, and then secondly, on video, used to watch again and again, and the making of, because I loved I loved Jabba the Hutt, and I loved the creatures in the palace, because that was the most creature feature of the three movies. And as well, I loved the Vader and Luke stuff with the Emperor.
That's the part I was scared of. I remember even being older.
Yeah.
And I was petrified of this
who?
Vader guy. I was like putting my feet up on the couch, cushion over my face, not brush my face or anything, but like hiding behind the cushion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do
The Dark
like,
Lord of the Sith.
I guess for you it would have been different, because watching it as a smaller a little kid. You must have been scared though, innit?
Yeah. I wasn't scared, but I wasn't scared. I was scared of the Incredible Hulk TV show, not Star Wars. But I just remember loving it so much. And for me, it's what's always stuck out actually was the redemption arc of Vader, or Anakin, should I say. Because, and maybe that sowed seeds in me becoming a Christian, because the concept of redemption has always been powerful for me. I know there's those who feel like Anakin could never be redeemed, especially after they saw Revenge of the Sith. But the idea of love, a love of a son liberating his father, the love of a true Jedi vanquishing the darkness, is a very powerful message. And it's not that Vader so much deserves redemption or Anakin deserves redemption, it's that the power of that love and goodness and belief in what was in this half cybernetic corpse of a man, it reanimated him, it brought him back to life. And the Emperor's absolute evil doctrine was contradicted in a powerful way, because the Return of the Jedi is a play on words. It's multifaceted. It's not just Luke Skywalker returning into the battle. It's not just the potential return of the Jedi Order, but obviously it's the return of the Jedi Anakin Skywalker, and the fact that the Emperor ultimately was the one who was wrong and misguided. So I love that stuff. But what I didn't love so much was the panel at Celebration.
Oh, what were they? I didn't see that one. What were they saying?
Let me just say, first and foremost, I think Ming-Na Wen, who plays Fennec Shand in the Book of Boba and Mandalorian, she did a great job. I like her. She's a great Agent May in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. Yeah. I think she did a great job. She was enthusiastic. She was funny. I feel she could have handled Billy D. Williams better, because I'll get to that in a point. But the initial half of the panel was creatives like Neil Scanlon and I think the visual effects guy, and Doug Chiang, who's been around since the prequels in terms of basically being the sort of prequel era Ralph McQuarrie, designing all the art for the movies. They are interesting to a point, but they weren't around. None of them were around during Return of the Jedi. So I'm like, why are you interviewing these guys? And the way they tried to be clever with it was, how did this inspire what you did with our movies, the Disney era movies? And I just felt that was weak, because it was almost, it wasn't really talking about Return of the Jedi. It would have been great to have had a Phil Tippett or somebody from that era who was involved with those movies, actually talking about those movies in anecdotes, rather than people who were just saying how they were inspired by it. So when that first half of the panel, I was thinking, really?
So considering it's the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi, is that all they came up with?
Yeah.
They couldn't fly the people over. Maybe they couldn't make it, or maybe just weren't available.
Or just at least talk more about the movies rather than using it as a jump off point to talk about the Disney movies. So there was that. And then they turned it around. They had Mark Hamill via Zoom or Skype just give a pre-recorded, hey, hope you have a good time at Celebration, bye. It's always good to see Mark Hamill. And he did say, be kind to each other, because he knows our Star Wars fans how rowdy they get. But then they almost turned it around by bringing out Warwick Davis, who normally would have been hosting this kind of thing, because that's his stick. He's very good at it. They brought out Anthony Daniels, I'm CPO, and who I loved how Warwick was just giving him shade. They were just in a comedic way, but I felt some of it was probably real, like he was just jeering him. And then you burst his ego a little bit. And then you had Ian McDiarmid, Emperor Palpatine, who's always a class act, come in, and Billy D. Williams, who's getting old and slow. He's in his 80s. And the thing is, he's a legendary actor, Billy D. Williams, but obviously in that context, he's just Lando. But it felt a little bit like he was left out in the cold in the interview. He's more slurred in his speech. He's not very quick. So there was difficulties. And I think Ming-Na had that obstacle to try and deal with that. But she started off just asking him, does he remember being in a sandstorm filming Jedi like over 40 years ago? And then took ages to get back to him with a question that he could answer. And of course, you give Anthony Daniels a mic and you won't get it back. He was just talking. But thank God thank the Lord he was there, because otherwise, actually Warwick could have done so much, because he's very funny and entertaining. But I just felt that it just felt a little bit unspecial. Of course, the late Carrie Fisher, bless her, couldn't obviously, she would have made it
that would have been funny.
so much fun if she was still alive.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford did give a recorded message at the end, which was nice. But it just reminds me how so many of the core cast are dead now. Yeah, you've Peter Mayhew, bless him, passed. His wife passed just a few days before the convention. Kenny Baker, David Prowse, obviously the late great Carrie Fisher. Even more so for Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford to have been there, but they're not going to be flown over for that. Harrison Ford is still a massive star, really.
I guess if it was in the USA,
they would have
been
been
there, but because they probably tied it with other projects, maybe.
Yeah. A documentary would be interesting. So I know they're re-releasing the movie in cinemas, so that's some respect. End of April, wow.
Yeah, I think end of April it's going to be shown in cinemas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that'd be interesting.
Now we'll get into a Star Wars argument of which one would it be. The special edition that everyone hates with Vader going, no! Or some dusty print from 1983 to make the purists happy. By the end of it, no one's going to be happy, are they? No one ever is going to be happy in a galaxy far, far away, which is a perfect segue alert to our next topic, which is...
is Star Wars ruining Star Wars?
Yeah. Treading on toes.
Ruining itself.
Yeah. The dog eating its own tail.
Yeah.
Cannibalism. So, we have a theory that it's impossible to be happy as a Star Wars fan. And it's impossible for Star Wars to please anybody more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think for me, it's obviously I always can only talk from a perspective as a casual fan.
Yes.
But I have a feeling for those devoted ones, they're like, what on earth is going on? Like, when are they going to get it? Maybe get rid of Kathleen Kennedy, maybe bring George on. Because I think for me, bringing George on set is something I keep on saying it to you. They should bring him on set, allow him to have some sort of
it authenticates things.
Because it's like, they got those movies so wrong.
Yeah.
And I think for me, what's bringing back Star Wars back alive again for me is the show, is the series.
Yeah.
I think if it wasn't for the series, I don't know.
But anywho, we won't go exactly there. But I'm gonna give some respect to Kathleen Kennedy. I'm not a hater anyway. I think.
I'm not a hater.
I think she's been in an impossible situation, and I think where Kevin Feige is not just an executive for Marvel, going down the Marvel, the MCU route, he also was a fan and someone who knew his Marvel. He knew the source material. I think Kathleen Kennedy, I think she's learning now that she can still be the top executive, but to lean more on Filoni and Favreau. And I think what's happened is they've put a lot of weight on them now because they realise that they were the only ones doing Star Wars that unanimously was successful and was working. If only that was done earlier. And I do have a bone to pick with Jon Favreau, who I really dig. I think he's great. I heard that he was one of the people asked to direct The Force Awakens back in the day because no one wanted to do the job. JJ had to be handcuffed and, I don't know, blackmailed to do the job. So really, in a roundabout way, it's kind of Jon Favreau's fault. I said it.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe Jon Favreau you know what, T?
Yeah.
Taking on a Star Wars movie, if I was a director in that industry and I was doing my thing, and I got asked to do a Star Wars movie, I think I would decline.
I wouldn't touch it.
Because it's such a risky job.
Yeah.
You're having to think about all the other movies that George has made, and then you're having to pick up this thing from this most... Star Wars is I would say is the biggest franchise and film franchise in the whole world. It was.
And it's probably still the most controversial because of the level of that historic love.
So to be a director on a movie, can you imagine when Rian Johnson and JJ was directing, they must have been shaking.
Under pressure.
Down, internally.
I was in The Force Awakens in the background, in case you know. Really? Were you in The Force Awakens? And I must say, JJ was lovely. And I'm not saying that because I'm legally obligated, but there was a lot of pressure, and I could see. And that first movie turned out good. My thing really is, my thesis is, that's a THE, not the F1, is Star Wars came primarily through the mind and the imagination of one man, George Lucas. Yes, there was Lawrence Kasdan, and he's Gary Kurtz, he's creative producer at the time. It was filtered through different creatives, from visual effects to art, Ralph McQuarrie, etc. But the only one who had a rubber stamp that could say this, that, was George. So he was the filter through all of the creative decisions, all of the content. So whether he changed his mind on things, he was famous for changing things and retconning, it all ultimately came through his filter, through him. So he is definitely the father of Star Wars. Loads of contributors, people that made his ideas better, absolutely. But it was through his rubber stamp that we got the galaxy that we have. So that's that. You remove Lucas from the equation and you sideline Filoni, and you get everybody else's interpretation of what Star Wars is. Without that consistent funnel, yeah, you may have a Pablo talking about what's canon or not, but in terms of the spirit and the vision and the storytelling of Star Wars of a Galaxy Far Away, it ends up being like fan fiction. You get a Rodriguez over there, you get a Ryan Johnson over here, a JJ doing their own version of Star Wars. And you're surprised it's not cohesive, especially because they never sat down and mapped it all out.
Yeah, why didn't they sit down there around the round table?
Yeah,
you don't have these round table chats.
Legendary
Or
Knights,
fireside chats,
Arthurian Knights.
And then plan exactly what they're doing with it. Because I think if they'd done that, maybe had George there as well.
Yeah, George. I'm just
right,
breezing in. Don't mind me.
Those films would have gone down so much better.
Yeah.
But because people just doing their own thing, JJ was making his, then to make the net, it's like they didn't have that conversation.
Yeah.
Because how could it not make sense? It just seemed like they were on set and they're just doing some rewrites and made it up as they would go along. You can't do that.
Ouch.
Seriously, that's how I sort of done it. Like they just literally did some rewrites.
Oh no, Misa so sad.
The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
How on earth can that finish that finish off the whole 3 movies? I don't
The
understand.
9 saga.
How?
Not just the 3 movies,
That was
sequentially.
epic,
9 movies that ended.
That was an epic failure, Tony.
Yeah.
That is bad writing.
Oh gosh.
How could they change it like that? It made me feel like I was supposed to see Rey's mom and parents, sorry.
Yeah.
And also, how on earth is she end up being like the grandchild to
Palpatine.
How does that?
They explained it in a book that's off camera, which says it all, really, isn't it? You know, when you have to go off camera.
They must have done some rewrites. Sorry on set because
Yeah.
that just did not make any sense. And it's only after a while I got it, and I've thought about it. I thought, actually, nah.
So for me, the hardcore in the room, the problem I have is that I think it almost goes back to what we said about why we went at Celebration, because we're Christians and we felt at the Easter it's our own personal belief and we wanted to see that as sacred. But for many in the Star Wars fandom, Star Wars is their religion. It's not ours, we're fans. Not the full definition of fan like fanatics, we're fans, we're soft fans. When something is your be-all and end-all, it gets very tribalistic. It's like whether here in the UK you're Labour or Conservative, or in the US you're Democrat or Republican. You take things that are meant to be fun and joyous and you turn them into weapons. You weaponize it. You want to make it a spear or a gun blaster, and you want to go to war over things that were supposed to be escapism. Why is it that deep? You've got whole channels and videos dedicated to how much they hate Star Wars, or rather the management of it. And again, I'm not saying you should love it, but to be so invested in how much you hate what's going on and how much you loathe the leadership and stuff like that, that's a little bit sick. But what it is, the same way that people will find anything to be divisive. It's something in human nature. Ironically, it's almost like what George Lucas was saying with Anakin, that you love something to death. Anakin loved Padme to her literal death. smothered and tried to control and make it something. And I think a lot of people, both those who are making Star Wars, who are trying to make it about all these maybe progressive and woke ideas, which is what happens when it becomes less the imagination of a singular guy or gal and more of a marketing thing just purely to make money, i.e. Disney, but also a weapon. You want to change the world and make it overtly to stuff your politics into it by the Trojan horse, putting it in a Star Wars body or package, but you're using it to try and force, pun intended, your agenda, your politics, your ideology into it, rather than it being what it was, a space opera that was a lot of fun and escape. Yes, there was politics in Star Wars. It was, Empire's Republic, but it was more so a fairy tale in the modern age. I've seen thousands of hours of George Lucas interviews, and the politics was there, but it wasn't so much politics of identity politics or ideology. It was more about power and the haves and have-nots and rebellions fighting against the machine, like THX. So I think they've hijacked the spirit of Star Wars and said, no, Star Wars has always been political, shut up, you just don't like it. But they've used it as a weapon to beat everybody up with, some quarters. And equally, some of the YouTubers have used it as a weapon to say how it's not the Star Wars that they want. So they want to see the whole thing burned down, a bit like the Joker in The Dark Knight.
Wow.
That was a rant and a half, wasn't it?
People have actually said that.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing to burn.
It's a bit like in The Dark Knight. Spoiler for The Dark Knight. When the Joker is with the criminals and he's got all that money that he just slides down, whee, and he burns half of it. And the criminal's like, what, that's money, you're burning millions. He's like, I don't care. I just want to see the whole world burn. I think there are those who claim to love Star Wars, but so far you see more of their hatred for it, and they want to see the whole galaxy burn down online. You see it on YouTube, and also you get more hits on likes on videos. You won't get hits and likes if you say you like, say, The Last Jedi, but you'll get like a ton of likes and hits and watches if you say you hate it and want to see it burn, like Kylo Ren. But I think, so on one hand, you've got rabid, divisive fans and outlets who they can't enjoy anything, even if they give a backhanded compliment. Oh, we like some of The Mandalorian, but everything sucks. But then on the other hand, you've got I think those who sit round a round table, not discussing the sequel trilogy, that was like on a scratch card, but those who are part, I think, the Lucasfilm brass, who are more interested seemingly in casting people for progressive purposes. We're going to have a certain number of female leads. I love a good female lead. Put it this way, the actress, her name escapes me, but she was in Queen and Slim. I think Jodie Turner-Smith. I watched the panel where she was, not the panel, I watched when she was being interviewed in the main square in Celebration. And she said something that really grated me. She called Star Wars patriarchal, which shown that she never really watched the Star Wars movie. The idea that there aren't any strong females in Star Wars and she's going to be one of the first. Seriously? Seriously? Yeah, you were going to say?
What about... Oh my goodness, the name escapes me. What about...
Princess Leia?
Yeah, exactly.
Padme?
I don't know what she's talking about.
Maz Kanata, I mean, they can go on. Mon Mothma?
I think sometimes people just have to say something for the sake of it.
She said a few things that she shouldn't have said. She swore blatantly in a room that would have had young children around, so she had to apologise. But I was less offended by the swearing that I do think was inappropriate, and more by the indication that Star Wars needs representation in a way, like somehow it's this oppressive kind of franchise. I thought that was telling, because I feel that's what you're going to see more of. You're going to see more of statements being made with Star Wars. You see some of the High Republic stuff, and it almost looks like all of it is about representation. I don't think there's a single male white character who's in a prominent role in this era. So you've got people of different, you've got a lot of female characters and a lot of ethnic characters, which on one hand is great, yay, progress. But but it feels so much what's going on in the real world being imposed onto the galaxy that it just feels like it takes me out of the enjoyment. For me, Star Wars is about the inner child as well, escaping in this immersive world, which is part fairy tale, part a lot of things. And I feel like the politics on one hand, the progress, the backlash of that, the rabid purists, those who still are the EU defenders who feel still butthurt after over a decade that the EU was pretty much sidelined. All these people are claiming to love Star Wars. But to me, it's like they've taken what George has made and they've made it very, almost a toxic playground where every now and again, I'm thinking The Mandalorian, you get to play in this world and have fun and just see it purely for what it is, a space opera Star Wars. But more times, you've got all this other stuff going on. Don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, it's just George Lucas made these films as if it's meant to be family films, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
for
why
12-year-olds.
From the stuff you're just saying, why does it have to be so taken so seriously? Why bring in what's in the world into the movies? People want to use the movies as escapism from people having issues and problems they have their personal lives. So this makes it worse, and I think as well social media, that's what social media's done.
Yeah,
it's literally made people just, why so serious?
When two tribes go to war.
Yeah, it's too serious, and yeah, it's meant to let you have fun, isn't it? So yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. And I think for me, the show, as you said, the shows, like Mandalorian, Boba Fett, it is like literally having a lot of fun, entertainment. Yeah. And if you're taking it so serious, bringing in from what's going on in the outside world to it, it's like it becomes less entertaining. Yeah,
I remember the late Peter Mayhew who played Chewbacca. Remember his thing would be enjoy it. Yeah, it's fun, enjoy it.
Exactly. With someone like what's her name, Jodie Smith-Turner.
Yeah.
Quiet. Say things if you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can't stand it when people bring up things and I don't know anything about the films.
Yeah.
She obviously didn't watch it.
I think she'd say she's not a Star Wars fan. She's not interested.
Maybe if you're not a Star Wars fan, maybe keep your mouth shut.
She's an actress that got paid for a gig, so I can't for that. But I think you need to read the room. Yeah. Star Wars is one of those fan bases that has not been heavily toxic when it comes to representation. I think obviously the old movies are a different era. Yeah. So just the world was different. But I don't think it's ever felt that obviously some of the fandom is toxic. Where, they've cast a female, Rey, Mary, Sue. But even then, I don't think the Rey, Mary, Sue stuff was... Listen, JJ presented Rey in a way where she was overpowered and had a lot of stuff going on, but there was a mystery around it. I think some people jumped the gun and were like going, why have you just made her powerful, more of this? Because she's female. But many of us were like, no, there's obviously something more to this story. It turns out that she's probably overpowered because she had Palpatine blood, a bit like a Skywalker, like the inverse. But it just wasn't told very well. And I think with The Force Awakens, it was meant to say, I remember reading some of the articles around Kasdan and J.J. Abrams that the Force had been dormant, so it's come back with a bang in these new Force users. So there were some ideas that they were playing with, but it just was not clear, which hence why the confusion. Even things like the fact that the First Order are like the Empire 2.0, you have nothing in between. Now you've got all these shows filling in the gaps, but there was nothing that explained why there's like the Empire's back, pretty much.
So that's the thing with me, because you had JJ and then you had Ryan Johnson, two different directors. I always say this all the time, is that they should have sat down together and planned this out, because if it was just JJ doing the whole thing, it probably would have been, I don't know, it might have been successful. Yeah. Or if Ryan Johnson did all three films, it might have been successful.
If JJ and Ryan had done what Favreau and John are doing now, even with Dave Filoni talking about bringing in elements of the expanded universe back into canon, if they'd done this back in 2012 when the Disney bought Lucasfilm, or at least that period of time, we would have been a very different place by now. I think a more healthier place, because there would have been the road would have been paved out moving forward with a little bit of input from George if they didn't just yeet his ideas. And now I do feel, especially after seeing the latest Mandalorian, I do feel hopeful that there's going to be good Star Wars coming out. But now Star Wars, ironically, the Mandalorian is about bringing the Mandalorian tribes together. I feel that Star Wars is going to split into various tribes. You're going to have the OG guys, a bit like us, Lucas, who are transferring our love of what Lucas made onto Favreau and Filoni. And then you're going to get stuff like you see with the Acolyte, where that's going to be going into different sort of a different ground of the High Republic, which those who really love these new High Republic books are going to really dig. And of course the stuff with Rey in the new movie after the Rise of Skywalker, that those who are hardcore fans, because there are hardcore fans of The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, they're going to get what they want. So I think it's a case of inevitability that the house is split. The question, is this a bad thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it inevitable that a house, bit of scripture, a house divided itself cannot stand? Maybe true for this, maybe not. Is it inevitable that Star Wars can't please everybody? So you're going to have these different splinter groups, and they've just made a decision and saying, you know what, rather than just try and please everyone, let's make enough content to spread around. Oh, you don't like meat, you're a vegetarian? Okay, here's some vegetables. You're a meat eater, here's some meat. Shut up and be happy.
Yeah, I really do. I think, bounce off that, I just really hope that they're able to, with these new films coming up, I really do pray that they're able to please all the fans in some different ways.
Yeah.
Because it needs to go down, because there's so much to lose with the movie.
So much to lose.
At the same time, I'm happy about the Filoni, and also I know James Mangold.
Yeah.
He is a great director. And the lady, what's her
Man
name?
of Gold.
Shameen, is that how you pronounce her name?
Shamin, I think Obaid Chinoy.
Okay, she has won 2 Oscars, but I've never seen her. I've never seen any
No.
of her work, and also I don't think they should make a great movie, so I don't have much hope in that one.
Yeah.
So I just but I do feel it for the devoted fans though, because they have big expectations.
Yeah. So I think the celebration. Listen, Star Wars is still lucrative, and there's still a lot of thousands of fans, if not millions, that love the franchise. I still count myself as one of them. We're Star Wars fans. But I think there's an acceptance that it's no longer the vision, the creative vision of one mind. It's made by a committee. And I think it's not lost on us that the best so far of Star Wars is the creative minds of Favreau and Filoni. That are the remnant, like the Empire remnant in the Mandalorian saga. They're like the remnant of Lucas. And I think that they are carrying the baton. And I think as long as we get that core sort of a pocket of Star Wars, a remnant, and they make content, we'll be happy. We'll try the other experimental stuff. The Acolyte, we didn't see it, because I'd love to be able to talk about the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, but us who didn't get in, we didn't get to see that. We'll talk about the Ahsoka trailer because we've got a reaction for that, but from what I'm reading about the Acolyte, it sounds like my jam. Like Jedi at their peak. I love the Jedi. Again, at some point I'm going to do a video about why I'm fed up of the Jedi always being painted as the bad guys in Star Wars. They made an epic mistake, but generally speaking, 25,000 years of keeping peace in the galaxy or fighting the dark side, that's not a bad run, if you ask me. So I think Star Wars is definitely eating itself. It's splitting itself into factions, because it's no longer, it's almost like the father has many children and they all go off and do their own thing, carrying the name and the legacy, but doing it very different. So the idea, I guess, is maybe we just shouldn't expect there to be all Star Wars we love, that there's the offshoot over here, like we're all Mandalorian, but you're the ones who don't take the helmet off, you're the ones who like looking in the mirror at your face, carrying your helmet, and then you're one that goes off doing bounty hunting and taking over crime syndicates on Tatooine. Whatever type of Mandalorian you are, I guess the show is suggesting you can come together. And I'm thinking the same way with Star Wars. There is no longer one Star Wars anymore. It's splintered.
teams, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely. Because so many fans, but different fans expect different things.
Yeah.
You got a casual fan like me, you got devoted fans.
Yeah. So I think ultimately Star Wars may destroy itself. It'll implode a little bit like how Galen put a little bit in Rogue One, a flaw in the Death Star, that it just takes one thing to exploit it. I think, unfortunately, at some point, Star Wars will not be destroyed from without, but be destroyed from within. It will always have a legacy from George Lucas of this amazing franchise, but I think every dog has its day. I don't want to see the end of Star Wars necessarily, because I love playing in that playground. But if it means that some of the nonsense on the internet, some of the viciousness and the spite goes, I wouldn't be sad to say, hey, comes to an end. So some new franchise can come up and everyone can fight over that at some point and be nasty. But anyway,
what we don't want is to burn to smithereens like the people have been saying on YouTube.
Yeah.
Because that is nasty.
Maybe like Rey stealing the Jedi tech, so she comes with a new hybrid of a franchise, which is a little bit of the best of the old and something new. But anywho, we could ask some questions about whether you think that Star Wars has split into so many different cells and splinter groups that at some point it's inevitable that they're all going to fight for supremacy of what is true Star Wars.
My question to you is, do you think that they should continue with the films or just stick to the series?
Yeah. And have you been inspired by what you've seen, or like us who saw on YouTube, this new era of Lucasfilm Star Wars, both the TV shows, the movies, the cartoons, the animating and all that stuff, the books? Has it made you, has it renewed your love of Star Wars, or has it have you scratching your head and foaming at the mouth?
Do you think there's just a lot of fuss and fighting over a film franchise and a series when there's so much more happening in the world?
People dying. Real wars, not a war in a galaxy far away. So anyway, that's our thoughts on Star Wars. This was our Star Wars special. We would have loved to have been there with so many of our fellow Star Wars fans in the London Excel. I don't know, maybe Japan. Is it Tokyo?
Yeah,
wherever.
Japan.
Maybe Japan will fly out and spend uber money to be there.
2025 as well.
Yeah, not too far. And who knows what they'll announce there, and hopefully some of that stuff will stick. But we love Star Wars all day, but we're not going to kill anyone over it, whether literally or with words, because I feel like the spirit of Star Wars is all about coming together. We're not going to kill anyone. I feel we align ourselves closer to the philosophy of the Jedi, which is peace and order in the galaxy rather than tyranny and warfare over essentially space opera, really, isn't it? It brings out the inner kid in me, but when I look at it from an adult perspective, it all is a bit silly. So anyway, I will continue to enjoy it as the little kid in me loves Star Wars, and I hope you do too. Where can people check us, Jay?
People can check us out on Spotify, Amazon and Stitcher and so many more platforms. And you can also see our beautiful faces on YouTube.
Hey, or just mine.
It's been T and J take over the world.
One episode at a time. I hope you've enjoyed traveling with us. Get home safely to your part of the universe. Until next time, bye.